the predictions, and it's gonna be sad. And knowing that, I have that in the back of my mind as I'm watching this, right? And so when we get to this episode 3, I'm like, oh, this is so great. Oh no, I want to stop right now because it's gonna go downhill. That's
Right.
my gut. That's what it's saying.
So we know from socials that Lucasfilm sent out some care packages to many of the actors in this, and they sent them some tissues,
No.
and they
Oh my
were
gosh.
like, "Hey everybody, it's Kyle with KennerHunter, and we are kicking off our first big review and reaction to Bad Batch Season 3, starting off with episodes 1, 2, and 3. I am joined by my lovely wife, Dom,
Mrs. KennerHunter.
Mrs. KennerHunter, and we are excited. So, little backstory. Huge Star Wars fan. Growing.
Yeah, but it's because I haven't seen the movies yet. The full portion of the movies. I've seen a couple shows. We've had conversations here and there, but I'm getting there. We're good. I have an opinion for each episode, and you'll find out why when we start talking about episode 3. There's a reason
Oh,
why. Yeah, I wrote a lot of notes.
I know.
Yeah.
That was a very fun thing when we're in the middle
Yeah.
of this in this dark room and I see you scribbling away. I was like, okay, we're going somewhere.
He actually turned the light on for me because I was taking notes. It was very sweet. Thank you.
So I've
But
I've joked with a couple of our followers on Instagram about this because there are a lot of pages that are putting out spoilers, that are putting out opinions, what they think is going to happen, and boy, did people notice a ton of details in episodes 1, 2, and 3. Some I missed the first time I watched it. So
oh, okay.
interested to see what you came up with. So let's dive in. Episode 1, Confined. What did you think?
Well, first of all, there will be spoilers in here if weren't aware of that already.
All right, so let's dive into episode 1.
All right.
Okay, I have to say we're off to a tremendous start to season
Mm.
3. A couple of these episodes have been my favorite of the entire series. Episode 1 brought us into an entire new environment with Omega, and she gets thrusted into this, incubation type role where she is on her own, dealing with her feelings, her emotions. We see that shine through, and we also see her start to shine through as well.
Mm. My overall feelings after this episode ended were just sad. I wrote sad, and I feel it in my gut. I just feel something. Something's going to happen. And I did notice the whole episode is from Omega's perspective, and I really recognized that in the camera angles.
Yeah.
It was filmed from, her vantage point, from her height, and those varying camera angles really created depth for me and really capitalized on the emotions you're feeling about her and for her, and what she's going through. I guess we could call it is it a prison cell that she's staying? Is it a room?
Yeah, I
Emery
mean
says it's
that's
a room.
she says it's not a it's just
Okay.
but yeah, come on, it's a prison.
Yeah.
We know that it's not as bad as Crosshair though,
Mm-hmm.
because he is in a little tiny cell with no window. She has a window. She
Mm.
gets to see a beautiful valley. She's got a bigger room, and
She had a
so
lunchbox with her chicken
she's
nuggies
got her
that she.
chicken nuggets and her doll, and she's
Yeah.
ready to have a good time in prison. And so,
Oh.
I gotta say though, this episode, the music was amazing. It brought me
Mm.
right into Andor, the time period of the Empire taking the strongest hold that it could ever have on the galaxy. We feel that here. We see the stormtroopers, dying and being left on their own in the jungle. The
Mm.
tone is different. I liked it. It was serious. The music was amazing. Those digital camera shots you talked about were so good. I mean,
Yeah.
it made it feel like this could be live action, and you could really,
Mm.
you're getting the same emotional pull that you would in a live action film. And so I love that about it. There was suspense here. And
Yes.
even though we have
Yes.
some moments that mirror season 1 where there's a lot of lightheartedness with Badja and they're feeding the hounds,
Mm.
even though we have that kind of take a step back, we get thrown right back into it. The subtleness, every time they're checking the blood, the sampling. I mean, it was really well done. It makes me excited for the season.
A lot of foreshadowing too.
Yeah,
There's repetition to really make you feel the prison like atmosphere,
yeah.
but any type of repetition that was happening really added to the story, and that foreshadowing, like I mentioned, I know that's going to play a key role throughout this season.
Right. We see time passing for her at first very slowly, and then we have a
Mm-hmm.
giant leap of time. We know she's been in there for quite a while. You see her posture change. She's very, upright. And then as we get going, she's hunching more, hunching more. We see that in Crosshair. And so definitely there is a big toll being taken on Omega, on the rest of the folks in this area. Um, and then we have all the science that's going on, the mystery of
Mm-hmm.
it. What's going on in the lab? What is Nala say up to? They are off to a great start with season 3. I cannot get enough of those overhead shots of the hallways of the lab. I mean, it made it serious, and for a cartoon animated series to do that, it's hard. It's hard to capture
Yeah,
that tone, and they did a phenomenal job.
it kept me wanting to watch, so
Yeah,
I was excited there were more than one episodes released within this period.
right. And I
Mm-hmm.
do wish that we had more of that. We've talked about it, that the hounds aspect just kind of takes us a little bit away from the seriousness of it, and it reminds us, okay, this is kind of meant for a kids show and for true fans and all that.
Oh,
But
for me, I felt it when the hound was crying at the end or howling, whatever it was
yeah,
doing. That really got my emotions and really made me feel like, oh, this is gonna get really deep, and I'm probably gonna cry at some point.
yeah, we
Like,
we see Hemlock coming in, and
mm,
the master at work in there, and you see those wheels turning, and he's like, he's gonna
mm,
make sure that she has that little bit of freedom, and it really gets
mm,
taken away little by little, and it settles in for her by the end of the episode that she's not going anywhere. But the beautiful thing about Omega, she's not losing hope. She still has that spark of hope,
mm,
and we talked about the hounds being that little reminder that she does have that hope. And we're at a part in the Star Wars era universe that spark of the rebellion, the hope, is what is going to start taking more and more of a hold against the Empire. And so seeing that subtle reminder in there, I loved it. It makes me think, Omega has a bigger role to play in where we are headed as we get closer and closer to the Rebels era, to A New Hope, through Andor, all those series. Um, where's she gonna land in this? Does she make it out? We haven't seen her in any part of the other Star Wars universes, so um, where does she go? We don't know. All right, so we've heard from episode 1. Leave us a comment. Did you like it? Was it one of your best? Let's dive into episode 2 now.
and don't forget to subscribe to KennerHunter's channel.
Thank you. Episode 2, Paths Unknown. We are reunited with Hunter and Wrecker as they travel the galaxy looking for Omega. We land on a jungle planet. For a second there, I thought, are they at the planet where Mount Titus is, where Omega is at? But quickly we find out they are not.
I really don't have much to say about this episode because overall, I just wish it were a snippet. And I think I'll just give you my full conclusion opinion. I wanted more out of this episode, and I felt there was a lot of filler when their care for Omega was already expressed fairly early on in this episode because they are looking for her and they are going on this mission to save her, is my assumption. Is that correct?
Right.
So that was already made abundantly clear from the middle, not even the middle. I feel like from the beginning of this episode and all of the extra stuff. Yeah, it was a cool little adventure they all went on, and I just was over it. I was falling asleep a little bit during
Yeah.
this one. It's really hard for me to stay. This will be a conversation for later episodes and later podcasts between the two of us, but yeah, I was falling asleep a little bit.
So this goes back to the same tones and themes that I've saw in season 1 and 2 that I wish weren't there.
So there was a quote at the end of episode 2 that I wanted to get your perspective on. because I felt like it was important, but I don't quite know why. And hearing some of your opinions, now I'm thinking it's sort of a projection of Hunter and Wrecker, whichever one said it. They were talking to the younger boys and said they were going to take them to an island to make their own path and be something other than a soldier. What are your thoughts about that quote and that potential projection?
So there was an interesting thing at the end. We see Hunter sitting by the computer, and he looks over and sees Wrecker having a good old time with the regs, and they're laughing. And you see him almost lose himself a little bit in the tragedy that this is, that Omega's no longer with them, that they've lost tech. You see him grappling with that a little bit, and he sees Wrecker having a good old time over there, and you see that glimmer of hope pop up with him once again. And he gets up and he walks over there, and he's no longer worried about life. He's like, let's take care of these kids. Let's get them back. Let's take them to the island, drop them off. Let's continue our journey and keep going. And so, comparing that to where Omega is in episode one, you see tremendous growth. We see her, thrust into this prison environment, and she's incubating in her own mind. And for the first time since the entire series, she's not getting influenced by Clone Force 99. We see her
Mhm.
on her own. She's, in her own mind, and she's forced to do this. She's forced to be in this solitary environment, and instead of losing herself, she's growing, she's getting stronger. We see her a little bit in the beginning of episode one, getting more and more crouched over. We see the same thing happening with Crosshair, but towards the end of episode one, we really see she's getting that strength in her. She's kind of becoming her own person for the first time. It's really neat to see that for her. And the contrast there, we see Hunter kind of breaking down a little bit. We see Omega getting stronger. I One thing though with Hunter, because of his connection with Omega, I really expected him to get a little bit more into himself, maybe broken down a little bit more, lose some of his edge, because with Hunter he is able to hear things, and he's able to track people, and he's sort of the one that always has one foot ahead of himself, ready to go. And I feel like I would have liked to have seen that be a little bit, taken aback,
Maybe that's the reason why he's not tracking Omega right now. Maybe that's getting in the way of whatever his talents
and it
and
could
gifts
be
are.
right. And he's compartmentalizing that. We know they're soldiers; they put things where they need to be. So I'm interested to see where his growth is going to go, because we've seen it. We've seen him go from this hey kid, soldier, to a very soft spoken person, and you see the love that he has for Omega, and it translated really well through season two. And so right now, I'm looking for that brother father figure to kind of come in a little bit stronger, because you see Wrecker really beaten up by it when he's talking with the kids and talking about how we've lost people, and he's talking about tech, and he's talking about Omega. And so I really would have liked to seen that a little bit more, him to give into it, just to help his character, be a little bit more dimensional. So
So overall, we wanted to see more, just not this episode.
absolutely right.
Just not this episode.
Diving into episode three, Shadows of Tantus. It's a cool episode. I gotta say, it might be my favorite episode of the series. There was some really cool scenes. We jumped right back into the same feelings that we saw in episode one. I love the tones, the music, the camera angles. This one felt like some suspense, and I was surprised. I don't get that a lot with these shows, but I liked the suspense. They made it feel real.
My overall opinion of episode 3 was glorious. I want to stop here because I know it's only going to go downhill from here. And I don't know if the storylines you were telling me before we watched the series, because he gave me a warning, y'all. He said, "Hey, I want to watch this with you." And then he started talking about all the predictions, and it's going to be sad. And knowing that, I have that in the back of my mind as I'm watching this, right? And so when we get to this episode 3, I'm like, oh, this is so great. Oh no. I want to stop right now because it's going to go downhill. That's
Right.
my gut. That's what it's saying.
So we know from socials that Lucasfilm sent out some care packages to many of the actors in this, and they sent them some tissues,
No.
and they
Oh my
were
gosh.
like Omega's tissues, and we know this is going to be a roller coaster. We don't know where it's going. I think that there's some writing on the wall with where we're headed, but one thing's for sure: this is serious. Things are changing for the Bad Batch. We saw such a climactic ending to season 2. Now with episode 3, a lot happened. It sets up a tremendous amount for the rest of the season. Good thing is there's a ton of episodes left. Let's dive into episode 3.
Right. We know that's an unexpected guest is set to arrive. Was not expecting it to be an emperor, but okay. Um, then I only wrote long necked booted Betty because I don't know her name. I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
I long neck booted Betty. I don't.
Well, I
I wore
can't.
my boots. You can't see them, but I wore my boots today, just for her. But what's her? What's this alien? It's the
So
alien,
Nala
right?
say she
Nala say.
Nala
Okay,
say
let me write that down. Hold on. I need my pen.
here. Nala say we know her as one of the Kaminoan scientists, one of the main ones that has been working this entire cloning environment since episode 1 and beyond of the Phantom Menace. We know that they've been
Okay.
at work for a very long time.
They have not been testing Omega's samples.
Right.
Well, Nala
So
say has
so
not.
let's talk about Nalase real quick
Okay.
because we saw her be used as a bargaining chip in
Mm.
season 2, and we knew that they needed to get Omega back to help push her, Nalase, to do this work for the Empire. And so it was a very interesting thing. She was very reluctant, thrust back into this environment. You see the toll that it is taking on her. I mean, her homeworld was destroyed in season 2.
Oh.
She's taken away from all of her other species.
Mm.
The Kaminoans are gone. They're lost. Their species is destroyed by the Empire. And now she's locked in the same environment that Omega's in,
Mm.
under tremendous pressure. And really by the end of this episode we see her voice is different. She's getting lower to the ground. She
Interesting.
sounds broken. She sounds sick.
Oh.
There is some kind of heartache happening, some kind of fatigue going on with her. It's the first time we see a Kaminoan that is not posed and collected. These
Mm.
Kaminoans that we saw in Star Wars Attack of the Clones, when we first get to see our first glimpse of Kamino, they are these tall, regalious creatures that are just, they're set up in such a stoic and smart manner. And now we're seeing her break down. I mean, their voice is trembling. It sounds like she's got a cold. Like there's a
Oh,
lot going
I
on in her
actually
character.
I actually loved her voice. It sounded very peaceful and there was still strength in there that I picked up on, but I didn't know that it was
Definitely
than
sounds different.
different in previous
And I
seasons.
think the
Okay.
strength that you're talking about in her voice, again, is
Mm.
that spark of hope. It's all
Mm.
around Omega. Whatever she's pushing through is to make sure that Omega is safe at this point.
Yeah, it was very parental. Like you could do whatever you want to me, just don't hurt the kid. And I really appreciated that about Melissa's character because we weren't getting it from Emery, and that's where I was seeking it was from Emery at the beginning. But when it came from Nalase, I was okay. This is great. At least we're getting that piece in a character that will be helpful. And when that did manifest throughout this episode, I was rooting for it. I loved it.
Yeah, I think it's the first time, at least for me, watching a Kamino and being like, gosh, I feel really bad for her. I
Mm-hmm.
normally just didn't have an opinion about him. Um, but let's talk about, you mentioned big one, Palpatine.
Oh yeah.
Palpatine is here. Ian McDermott back in the saddle. Very interesting, right? You think so?
I didn't care about that part because, okay, look, you have this scientist, right? Lab's destroyed. He's all high on power. Okay. The Emperor comes, takes a look at everything that's going on, and we know from the episodes that we've seen thus far not much is happening, right? And so the part that I did care about is why now? Why are you here now as things are failing? Because that was mentioned. I don't remember if it's in one of the Emperor's conversations or amongst the scientists. Maybe between
Hemlock
Hemlock
says
and
it, yeah.
Nalise, I think, because they know like their time's almost up. They need to hurry up, and so that's why I said I didn't really care about the Emperor being there because something's up. I got that feeling from this
Yeah,
part.
so the interesting with him coming in, there's so much online right now talking about Dave Filoni saving the sequels. You know that
Mm-hmm.
this is his way and his projects to not only make the sequels make more sense, but to add more credibility to them. And I'm very conflicted with that because we saw the Clone Wars with Dave Filoni take some characters in a direction that George Lucas really wanted him to go in. We saw that with Ahsoka, and there's been so much of a battle cry with people that love Ahsoka, hate Ahsoka, love the direction it went in, what it meant for Anakin and Obi Wan, leading up to Revenge of the Sith. And so when I look at that grand plan of Filoni, he was given the reins directly from George Lucas, which is a very unique role within Lucasfilms because we've seen so many other directors come in and take the projects in a lot of different ways. And even though maybe George Lucas was brought in to, give a little bit of a thumbs up, it wasn't the same mentor-mentee relationship that Dave Filoni has had now for years through the Clone Wars and through all his various projects through live action that we're seeing now. Is this the right mechanism to add credibility to those future, films within this universe? And I'm conflicted on it because I think for this season we're seeing there's so much emphasis on where we're headed, and you feel that the tone of the empire coming in. We see that Palpatine himself is very serious in this,
Mm-hmm.
talking about the future of the empire. And he knows his days are somewhat numbered. There's
Mm-hmm.
so much to dive into the Sith world with him, but he has a plan. Now, his plan doesn't necessarily take us all the way through the sequels, but more so to continue his reign on the Empire. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that it wasn't just service to the sequels. It shows Palpatine as we know him through A New Hope and the original trilogy, pulling those strings, making his decisions, mysteriously known throughout the galaxy.
Yeah.
And I appreciated coming from his character about how this is importance. There's so much at stake with this, and for me, it recentered a little bit away from okay, this stuff's just going to help out the sequels and that's it. I liked that it went back to the roots of Star Wars, to where the Empire was, and we really feel it in this episode. We feel the strength and that you know ruler mentality in the Emperor. We see that with all the commandos and the stormtroopers lined up out there. I love it every time we get those kind of images that'll just right back, to Return of the Jedi, and just these really strong images of the power that the Emperor had on the galaxy and how much he's willing to do to keep that power. All right, so we know the Emperor is here, and he wants to know about Project Necromancer.
Okay, I giggled when I heard the name because Dr. Hemlock made it seem like, yes, Patrick Necromancer. And I'm like, wait, what a power trip. I bet the Emperor made up this name just purely for his own enjoyment. It was just sitting there one day and was like, what will make me giggle will make everyone else terrified. So
I know. And what we get the cool and reluctant turn of Ian McDermott coming in, and he's the fate of the empire. And he comes in and he wants to know if he's gonna stick around for a long time and at what cost.
I don't think so. He just doesn't care about much. It's like, yeah, I'm not on schedule. I'm probably out of money.
He sets
Destroyed a
he
lab.
sets the schedule.
Failure.
Okay, so we know that Omega steals the Apple iPad off the.
I also wrote Omega is too calm, honestly. She's like, just, yeah, long necked Betty said, Nalase. Nalase said, it's an emergency. I'm in danger. I need to leave. Just, dawdling about this. What are they, a lab, I guess? It's
Yeah.
called a lab now again. So, just dawdling, and I think at one point even tells Cross when she finds Crosshair is like, yeah, we gotta get out now. But there was no conveyance of urgency until Crosshair gets out of his cell. Then the urgency starts picking up. But I also noticed that Omega did not go back for her doll. I would have went back for the doll, save the toy, you know. But because that didn't happen, it made me think that there will be some type of reunion with the person that this doll represents, or the community that this doll represents, and that there's no longer a need for it anymore.
Yeah, we definitely see her run as quickly as she can.
Mm-hmm.
Even Crosshair tells her like, "What's your plan?" And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
"We're escaping. We're getting out of there."
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that there's that quick charm about her. She kicks the droid back out of the elevator.
That okay, so the part where Omega is going to find Crosshair, one of my favorite parts of this episode is when I wrote down she kicks the Roomba looking droid when she's getting into the elevator. And there isn't much comedic relief either in this episode or throughout this season so far. So that makes me think it's gonna be bad. Like there's not
Yeah.
gonna be much comedy left.
No, but I loved it,
Okay.
and I think that it grounds us in what Star Wars is supposed to be. That lightheartedness. You're not supposed to take it seriously. Those little
We're
jokes.
doing a podcast about it, y'all. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
yeah, but
I
the
know.
fate of the Empire. We know. So in this episode, we have a really cool parallel, and it takes us all the way back to Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, when Qui Gon is checking young Anakin's blood for his midichlorian count, and he sends a sample back to Obi-Wan on the ship, and on the screen that shows the midichlorian count, it's the same screen
Mm-hmm.
on Omega's iPad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty cool. I mean, we know it's on the nose talking about the M count. Okay, it's got to be midichlorians. I get it. It's everything that binds life together in the Star Wars universe. But it is cool. It's a little breadcrumb of this is what we're looking at. This is the future of it. And to me, I love that Dave Filoni is letting this be its own thing. And even though many people are saying that this is going to help, funnel into the sequel trilogy and sort of not only make it, have more purpose, but to ground it back into the original Star Wars universe a little bit more for those that are not a fan of the sequels. And so, like I said before, I'm really happy to see the way Dave Filoni is taking this. Again, it adds a lot more credibility to the animated shows that he has been on. It continues to really push itself as being more than just a cartoon for adults. I mean, the storytelling is there. The way that they are using the camera angles in this
Mm-hmm.
season in this digital environment is very neat. The music has just set the tone for this season. I really hope we continue to see anytime we're dealing with the Empire that same tonal music. It was so good. It reminds me of Andor. It just has this very strong, counterintelligence type feel to it that makes it a spy thriller in the making. We know Omega has a lot of information she's gathered while being there, and she gets to take it back.
Oh, she's a spy.
Well, I mean,
She's a spy kid.
this is a Spy Kid episode. So
Okay.
so no, but it's cool because we
Yeah.
we know that Rex and Echo are off, somewhere in the
Mm-hmm.
universe, creating the spark of the rebellion. They're working hand in hand with so many of these iconic characters to set up future story arcs, to set up for us to even be able to get to A New Hope. We know that that's taking place. And so, whatever information Omega is going to be able to get back to them, hopefully she does. We don't know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be interesting. And I really hope we get to see this season merge a little bit more with that spark of the rebellion. I'm really hoping
Yeah.
that as we get through the next couple of episodes, that are probably going to be pretty tough. I think they're going to. I think we keep the tone right. This could be
I'm
a very
bad.
action-packed season, and
Okay.
it's different when dealing with cartoons to even think you're going to get that much out of it. So I'm excited.
Mm,
I'm hoping that we keep the tone the same. The beautiful music that's in there for me was just it set it up for success, and I'm all about the adventurous side of it, but the seriousness for me, it adds another level to it that I really
I thought Emery was dead when she finds Omega and Crosshair and was like, "You don't have to do this," and they go bang bang, and I was like, "Oh my
so it's
gosh, I
funny you
really
say that.
did."
It's funny you say
Okay.
that because I expected Crosshair to immediately, take her out, and I
Mm,
really thought he would, judging from how he has interacted with so many other. He had when he does his minor prison escape in season 2, and he gets to the control center and he's able to send a message
mm,
to Clone Force 99 and say they're coming for Omega before he's taken back down with that gas. It's interesting. There was no gas used like in the other. I'm
yeah,
assuming it's
maybe.
in the same environment, the same Mount Tantus, but we see him get gassed, and that's what knocks him down. And
Mm,
Hemlock comes back in the room and re-imprisons him, but he did send that message out, and so now we're back in the saddle. He had no issue with taking out troopers or anybody around him, but he hesitated. And I know it's for the story, I get it, but it shows that he knows Emery is different because he would have taken her out
mm.
very quickly. Even if it was just set to stun, I was surprised that he didn't immediately do it. Obviously, she triggers the alarm.
I wish Omega would have been the one to do it. Just a little bit of that sweet revenge.
All right, so final thoughts. 3 episodes in.
Mhm.
What do you think? You excited? You want to keep going?
I don't want to keep going, but that's because the story has been set up to end nicely here on episode 3. But I know in the universe that it has to keep going. The story has to keep going. So I'm preparing my emotions and my heart a little bit for what's to come. But at least I'm staying awake and I'm ready. I'm ready to see more. What about you? Where are
Well,
you at?
there is so much that could happen. We
Mm,
know that it's giving those fruits for the sequels a little bit to give credibility there. The bigger thing is we know that Dr. Hemlock now has the full resources of the Empire.
mm,
And where are we at in this timeline? We're early. We know the rebellion is a seedling out there that's being run by some senators, and we know that not much is happening there yet. But who's in control? We know that Vader is alive and well in this part of the galaxy. We know that Thrawn is also alive and well. And so there is a lot of direction left. Could we see Thrawn in this
mm.
season? Could we see Vader and Thrawn working side by side? Uh, we have Inquisitors out there. There is so much that we can go down before the season's over.
And that's
So
what worries me.
yeah, I'm excited
But
though. I'm
yeah.
hopeful that we get at least Vader in there somewhere. We
Mm,
haven't seen him yet, but he's out there. He's around. And so I would really love to see Vader. I would love to see Thrawn just to give us that dynamic. We got to see in Ahsoka a little
mm.
bit of Thrawn's recognition of the once General Anakin Skywalker. He knows about Vader. And so it is interesting to see if we get to see them side by side, especially with Thrawn's battle experience.
Mm.
We know that in the Ahsoka series that there is going to be a big to do with Thrawn as we move through that live action. So hopefully we get to see something going on here.
And that series still isn't done yet
That
either.
series isn't done. So we have
So,
so much to
yeah.
feed into that. There are so many main characters that are very young in this era of the Empire. Will we see any of them? I
Mm,
think the answer is yes, we will see something. We know that it's going to be centered around the Bad Batch. Hopefully, in episode 4, we get the gang back together. It's coming soon,
mhm,
and I just want to see where we're going. Peace is no longer on the table for the Bad Batch. So,
mm.
what is the new reality? Where is it? Where are we headed? I'm excited to see. Next week we have one episode, and so it'll be a
Fun.
very short review and reaction. We'll probably do it the same day and maybe release it on Thursday. But give us a comment. How did you like it? Hopefully, it's a little bit different. We wanna keep it fun and laid back, and we love to talk. I love to talk about it. So instead of us doing it at the dinner table, we're doing it on
We
YouTube.
waited to, we full disclosure, we waited to discuss our opinions until this moment as we're filming and sharing our opinions with you. So I love that.
I love it too.
All
So
right. See
we'll
you
see you
next
next week.
week.